So we got about 48 in. We'll go ahead and get started. For anybody who doesn't know me, I'm Keith Hodgson. I teach at the University of the Arts, director of music education there. I was a high school band director in New Jersey for 26 years. Randy roped me into working for Zeswitz last February, about a year ago, right? Almost exactly a year ago this week.
Almost. Happy anniversary.
As a director of music education, or as a director of education. And for a lot of you, you've been on a number of things since the summertime and the fall, different things that we've done with Tim Lautzenheiser and with all kinds of other guests. And hopefully that's why you keep coming back, that you've enjoyed some of the experiences. And of course, the feedback that we get is the best experiences are when we can actually collaborate together with colleagues and share. And that's what people get the most out of. So just to start, here's the way we're going to do it tonight. I'm going to just give a little bit of an overview. I'm going to throw it to Randy, who's actually just going to take about 5 minutes. He's going to show you a presentation, give you some numbers, and maybe hit you with some cold hard facts. And then I asked a couple of special guests. I asked Seth Jones I'm going to probably throw it to him next because he has recently gotten some feedback from a poll and on this topic that we're talking about, and have him share some of his ideas and then Dr. Selfridge is also going to share a little bit about how he and his colleagues have been working vertically within their program at Garnet Valley, and what they've found in terms of success and their ideas for moving forward. And then at that point, we really want it to be open to discussion and sharing what ideas you have and dialogue, and that's what the plan is tonight. So so the way this came about, we all know, let me just throw it out there, that we know that elementary recruitment has suffered dramatically, and how dramatic, Randy's going to tell you how dramatic. And then, it's very easy to think, well, that's elementary. They just don't have their starting numbers that they always do. But when you pull back, the people who really should be concerned, because the elementary folks are just going to pass them off a year later anyway to the middle school. The people who should be concerned are the middle school and high school folks, who it's going to definitely impact their program, middle school for the next 2 to 3 years, and then for the next 4 to 6 years at the high school and beyond, by the way. So I think that when you start thinking in those terms, it's all our concern, and we need to work together to do that. And so in a meeting with the road reps 2 weeks ago, this actually took up the whole time. So all we talked about was, how do we engage the secondary instrumental folks, to work with their elementaries, to work vertically, to come up with some solutions and ideas. Nothing that's probably going to solve anything overnight or even in the next year or two, but could certainly help impact. One of the things that's always on my mind are new roads. I call them, onboarding. How do we onboard people into instrumental and string programs when it's not fourth grade, in middle school and in high school? And when I was a high school band director, I started beginners all the time, right? All the time. It didn't matter, but there are, some programs aren't designed that way, but maybe we need to start thinking that way. So I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to throw it over to Randy to give a welcome and a brief presentation. Go ahead, Randy.
Thank you. All right. I'm sharing my screen, and Keith, you'll tell me if for some reason that's not working. Please interrupt me. But folks, I first of all want to thank you all for coming tonight, and 50 of you. That is just absolutely fantastic. You're here because you care about your programs. We're here because we care about your programs. I've said this before, and I hope you recognize this phrase, but nothing we do at Zeswitz matters without what you do in your classrooms. If it weren't for you, we just drop off a pile of instruments that would never get played. And there would be no Zeswitz, there would be no music industry without what you do in your classrooms. And as Keith highlighted just a moment ago, we're concerned about what COVID has done to your music programs, and we want to help. In fact, we not only want your programs to emerge from COVID, we want you to emerge stronger. And you on this call, we want you to be the heroes of your program's comeback. And if you think about what a hero story is all about, there is no greater story in all of literature, movies, films, than a comeback story, right? There's love stories, there's comedies, there's tragedies, but nothing stirs the soul like watching the hero overcome challenges, deal with great adversity, and come out the other side on top. And our challenge to you tonight is that you can be the authors of your own comeback story, that you on this call can inspire your colleagues and can work together with them to put together the comeback for your music programs. And it's going to be a great one. If you think about the keys to a comeback story, it's facing great adversity. And if you think about these are screenshots from Rocky IV. For those of you who haven't seen it, Rocky goes off and he fights before the fall of the Iron Curtain and the end of communism in Russia, fights a Soviet boxer by the name of Ivan Drago. He goes to Russia to train, and he goes through great adversity in his training in Russia in the middle of winter. And, if you were to compare what Sylvester Stallone's character in Rocky IV dealt with in that movie to what you all dealt with trying to teach band and orchestra beginners and band and orchestra students over Zoom, I'm not sure which one was really more arduous. You've dealt with unbelievable challenges in your day-to-day lives and in your careers. You've dealt with the challenges of new instructional models. You've dealt with issues with student engagement. You've dealt with pressures from administration and pressures in general. And all kidding aside, you've endured some absolutely tremendous adversity to get to this point. But the end is coming. And our challenge to you tonight is that you can overcome the challenges that your programs face. You can be the hero of your program's comeback. And tonight is going to be all about talking about how exactly to do that. What's it going to take for your programs to bounce back? In order to introduce this concept, as Keith mentioned, I'm going to talk through some numbers, and we're going to do a little bit of a case study here. And this case study is going to be about the Shayler Area Unified School District, okay? This is designed to be an illustration of the typical effects of COVID on a school district music program. And I hope that you all can see a little bit of your own program in this hypothetical school district, the Shayler Area School District. We're a really proud school district. We have a really successful music program. We start about 100 beginners a year in fourth grade. And let's say it's a band and orchestra program so that everybody can find some commonalities here. It's band and orchestra program. The beginners start in fourth grade. Then by the time fifth grade, about half of them shake out. And then, by the time they get to the high school, we're at a class of 10 or so students, and we do really great things. We've got a marching band. We've got a couple students every year that go to all county. And if every few years we've got somebody at the all state level, and we're a really tight knit faculty of 6. So in our elementary orchestra, we've got 150 students. In our middle school orchestra, we've got 83 students. In our high school orchestra, we've got 35 students, 3 faculty at the elementary, 2 faculty at the middle school, 1 faculty at the high school. What's going to happen to our music program in the wake of the pandemic? Well, here's a framework to help us think about the way that a pandemic, or the way that anything that changes in a music program, affects that music program. And it's the framework that says that a music program is like a leaky funnel. Many of you may have heard this concept before, but in case you haven't, think about a funnel where beginners pour in the top of the funnel, and that's your recruitment. And then the shape of the funnel as it goes down, that's your retention. If you retain a lot of students, your funnel is more like a pipe. If you retain very few students, it can start to look like an old school champagne glass or kind of a thumbtack. But the shape of your funnel is determined by retention as those students fall out of the program. And then out the bottom of the funnel comes your results. That's the students that you send to Allstate. That's your Best Communities for Music Education Awards. That's your high school marching bands and your ensembles on the stage in the high school. That's the product of the function of the 2 inputs: recruitment that goes in the top and retention that determines the shape of the funnel. And that's the framework that we're going to use to talk about the COVID impact on the Shayler Area School District music program. What will happen to the program's funnel? And if not addressed, how will COVID affect the future of the Shayler School District? So let's dig back in and talk about these 3 R's: recruitment, retention, and results in the Shayler School District. This is the same thing that I just showed you, except in a little bit more depth. And we're going to look at briefly the retention. So what I showed you earlier was the the retention of students in terms of the program size, what that really means is, we've got about 50% of our students that drop during the fourth grade. And then we've got great retention in the high school. And then we've got this thing going on that is common in a lot of programs where students kind of drop off around building changes. So the building change from elementary school to middle school, and then the building change from middle school to high school, we tend to lose students there. But once again, we've got a really proud program with 260 students in it and 6 faculty. And then let's take another quick look at the student-teacher ratio, since that's going to be an important thing for us to consider. We've got about a 50-to-1 student-teacher ratio in the elementary, a 41.5-to-1 in the middle school, and a 35-to-1 in the high school. So again, what's going to happen in the wake of the pandemic to the Shayler School District? Well, let's look at what happened to Zeswitz clients in general. And this is real data. If you look at the recruitment and retention results, as far as we can observe it using rental data, 2020 versus 2019, we saw an overall impact on new rentals, which is kind of a proxy for recruitment as best we can tell. That's the going in the top of the funnel, of about half. Programs that we serve in Pennsylvania and New Jersey recruited about half of the, on average, the number of students that they generally recruit. Some were better in upwards of 80%, some were at close to 0, but on average, it was about half of the typical year's recruitment. And then on the retention side, we saw an increase in returns or quits. And these are positive numbers. So this is an increase in quits, which is a bad thing, right? So that 15% increase in quits shows that on average, about 15% more students quit in 2020 than quit in 2019. I've got an asterisk on that because Zeswitz is also growing, and we happen to be a rapidly growing for what we do. We are the fastest growing company in our region. So there would naturally be a few more quits in 2020 because we started 2020 with some more rentals than we had in 2019. But suffice it to say, there was a little bit worse retention in 2020 than 2019. So here are the questions for you. How does this compare to what happened in your program? What were your retention and recruitment results for 2020 versus 2019? And that may be a tougher question for some of you than others, because especially if you are at the middle school or high school level, you may not have visibility into your recruitment and retention data, especially at the lower levels. And so this program tonight may be a challenge to you to find out some more about that data. If you're a Zeswitz client, we can of course show you what happened to your rentals. And we have done that in many cases, but there's the level of connectedness there that may not exist in your district, so that if you are at the middle school or high school level, you may not know what exactly happened as a result of COVID-19. And that may be something that after tonight you want to find out. But even from this average data, I think we can all draw 2 really important insights. The first is that this would lead us to question how concerned parents really are about the safety of woodwind playing. If parents were for some reason really concerned about spit and air and aerosols in students' classroom experience, I think we would see much worse recruiting and retention results for band relative to orchestra, which requires no aerosol production at all. But we didn't see that. And what I think that means is that parents really aren't all that concerned, or on the flip side, parents are very confident in the interventions that you've put in place with, for example, bell covers, which you have for free if you're a Zeswitz client, or many at this point have found their way to bell covers, and the safety devices like students wearing masks. Parents are pretty comfortable with that, this data shows. And then the next thing is that retention's really only off a little bit. Let's look at that as a glass that is 85% full. Students are having a good experience in the band and orchestra, thanks largely to your efforts and thanks to what you've done to continue the benefits of music. Students are having a pretty good experience, so they're sticking with it. Even though it may not seem like everybody's dialing into your Zoom lessons, it may not seem like students are as engaged as they have been in the past. We certainly recognize that and we understand that, but by and large, your students still have instruments in their hand, which means that they're still relatively engaged. And I think that's some really good news that we can build on. So let's go back again to the Shayler School District. The pandemic hits the Shayler Area Unified School District. And what happened in the Shayler Area Unified School District? Again, retention wasn't so much of an issue, but recruitment really was. So whereas the Shayler Unified School District usually recruits 100 students, this year in 2020 in the fall, we only recruited 50. All the other grade levels stayed about the same because retention was mostly unaffected by the pandemic, according to averages. So how's this going to play out? Well, I think you may have a sense for this, but let's look at some hard numbers for how exactly this is going to play out. This class of 2020 that was half-sized runs through the rest of the program over the next 8 years. It takes 8 years with no intervention for a recovery from the small recruiting class of 2020. So what that means is the elementary orchestra, where it's 100 now, is only going to be 125 next year. The middle school orchestra, starting in 2022, goes down to 63, and the high school orchestra, or high school band and orchestra, starts having problems from the years 2025 to 2028. And overall, it takes 8 long years for this to recover. And here's something that's even worse. And I don't mean to scare you by telling you this, but it's something that really must be considered, is that in order to maintain those student faculty ratios that I showed you in the Shayler School District at the beginning of the presentation, fewer faculty are needed on an FTE basis, full-time equivalent basis. So whereas 3 faculty were necessary for the elementary school, that goes down to 2 and 2.5 in 2020 and 2021. Middle school faculty goes from 2.0 to 1.5 and doesn't fully recover until 2025. And high school faculty goes to 0.8. We all have know and are familiar with what a 0.8 is in this world. That's something that keeps us up at night at Zeswitz. The idea that faculty staffing levels could be impacted by this is something that is truly scary. And it's impossible to tell what the impact of that will be long-term, but that's something that could cause a catastrophic effect on a program like Shayler Unified School District if it's not addressed. And then again, to make matters a little bit worse, we're hearing some challenges and some difficulties around recruiting again in the year 2021. So here's what happens in the Shayler Unified School District if there's still in 2021, next fall, still not a recovery of the full number of beginners, where we go from, usually we start 100 beginners in this school district, we go to 50, we don't recover all the way back to 100, we still end up with depressed results with 70. Then you can see again, back to the faculty, we go down to a low of needing 1.9 faculty in the elementary school, 1.5 in the middle school, and this 0.8 in the high school endures for a period of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And the total overall recovery takes 9 years. So what do we do about this? How do we address it? Well, let me show you the good news, which is that if we address it now, look at all that green on the bottom of the page. If the Shayler School District is able to recover the student participation in grades 4 and 5 between now and the fall of 2021, the comeback happens, right? All of those bad effects go away. So our challenge, our observation for all of you going into this, we're going to hear in a second from some of your peers who are already starting to think through some of these issues. But our challenge based on this modeling is that is to think about these key elements of a successful comeback plan. Number one, recruit a full-size class next fall. Get back to what you overcome what you need to overcome in order to recruit a full-size class in the fall. And there are several things that Zeswitz, several meaningful, impactful things that Zeswitz can do to help you with that. And we'll come back to that hopefully later in the session. The second is recruit and retain enough 2020 beginners to pass a full class to middle school. So you notice in this example, we go from if we go from 25 fifth graders to recovering fully 50 fifth graders. So that means either you've got to start some fifth grade beginners or retain a whole lot of your fourth grade beginners. 5/7 or about 71% of your fourth grade beginners would have to get retained in order to achieve this in the Shayler School District, to really put an emphasis on keeping these students in the program. They may not have had a very good experience because they didn't get to perform, they didn't get very far on their instrument, they may feel frustrated. Really keeping those students in the program is going to be key. And then the third thing is keep your faculty intact. That, we think, is the huge risk that programs face right now, is that student-teacher ratio putting a depression on the number of faculty serving students in school districts in the region. Keep your faculty intact. work together. If you're at the middle school or high school level, now's the time to create that interconnectedness and that collegiality that would have you going to your elementary folks and offering your help and support with recruiting and retention, because they need it. And a big part of this comeback can be from you. And especially at the middle and high school levels, you have a lot of resources to bring to bear to this. So that's my introduction. Again, Zeswitz has some very specific programs that can help you along with this, but that's the risk that we all face. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Keith to now highlight a couple of our clients and how our clients are handling these challenges in their school district. So Keith, why don't you take it away from here?
Thanks, Randy. So I guess it was Tom Kelly that put me into, gave me the information that Seth had really had this on his mind for a couple months now, and had actually reached out and done a poll, gotten a lot of feedback. So I gave him a call, and I'm just going to turn it over to him and see what he found out and what his thoughts are and what ideas you have. Go ahead, Seth, take it off.
Cool. Hi, everyone. So before I want to say anything, that what I can offer is more qualitative than quantitative, like Randy shared. I can tell you a little bit about how I got here. And I think I'm here tonight, and thank you, Keith, for letting me speak, and thank you, Tom and Randy. I think I just became a little bit social media famous about this topic in like the last month. And that's kind of how I got here. So those of you that are probably laughing, you know why, because I've gotten very fired up about this. But so I'm going to talk a little bit about my personal teaching situation, and then what is happening. And pre-COVID, I've been at Springford High School now for 9 years, and for the first 6-7 years of the program, um, I really just kind of did things, and my numbers just kept going up, and I was like, I'm doing all the right things. And then the last 2 years, they haven't been, and my numbers have been decreasing at the high school. And this is pre-COVID. And I found myself at the beginning of the last school year, like realizing that like I'm completely I'm out of my league when it comes to recruiting. Like I'm not doing anything really. And I realized, I'm seeing the numbers in my program contracting, and I realized I have to become more aggressive about it. And then COVID hit, and that kind of threw everything for a tailwind. And in our school district, we had other interesting scenario last year that led to like this being kind of a huge topic in our school district. One of our band directors retired during the pandemic, and the school district never filled a position. And we had a whole class of students without a teacher for basically the entire spring semester of the year. I very quickly got my high school students, in lieu of taking band at the high school, began teaching the fourth grade students because we had no teacher for them. And it was a thing, and we got through it. So, I think we've all been kind of living in this world where I don't know about any of you, but I keep feeling like, oh, the new day is dawning, and it just, this pandemic keeps happening, like it keeps going. So, over the holiday break here, about 6 weeks ago, I'm here at home, and I have a newborn son. So my wife and I, we decided not to go anywhere for the holidays. It was just the three of us in our house for the entire break, and all I've been doing is thinking about this problem. Like, my numbers were already going down, and now I'm dealing with this pandemic. Like, what are other people doing? Like what like I have so many band friends in the world, and I got very inspired by the After Sectionals podcast. If you listen to it over the summer, they interviewed Chris Yee, who's the director of bands at Cedar Park High School in Austin, Texas, which is like one of those just amazing programs. And he talked about how they don't view retention as retention. They view every level of their program as active recruiting. Like they're always recruiting. So they're not just simply thinking about retaining kids, they're thinking about recruiting them to the next level. And that got me inspired. And I went to like the Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware Facebook group, and I just posted out. It was like right before Christmas, and I just said, "Look, like, does anyone like want to talk about this? Like, is anyone having issues? Because I'm scared, and I just like I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm like way behind. I'm way behind the eight ball on this." And many of you were in that group. Many of you, we talked about it. And I found out that there was like this overwhelming response from everyone that wanted to have this conversation. Like we were all seeing recruiting issues within our programs on various capacities and various levels. And I realized I was thinking it was just going to be like a fun, like Friday beer hang on Zoom and we would talk about this. But when it like magnified into like the level of people that had interest and stakes in this conversation, I realized there's probably something a little bit more. And this is still an evolving project, but what I ended up doing was I kind of just like, one morning came up with like a qualitative survey that I put out to that group of people, which many of you responded and are a part of. And I started asking questions like, um, do you feel like you do recruiting well? Why do you think kids are in your program at any level? Because I didn't want to just be about high school bands. Like I wanted it to be for anyone. I asked the directors to like kind of characterize the students that are in their program. I know on my campus, I feel like the students that find a band find it for like a very personal reason. And I don't think like I have like a unified type of student. I asked if like the school districts did anything really weird or special. Like do you offer $200,000 to a kid if they sign up for band? Like, I was kind of like wanting to know if that was a thing because that might be worthwhile to know. And I asked people like, do you do things that do well? Do you things that don't do well? Because I personally feel like the tropes of what we tell kids about music education is like drastically changing in front of us because of the pandemic. I'm now walking around our campus and I'm like every kid is staring at a laptop all day. And we have kids in the building, but they're all on their laptops in the building with kids at home on their laptops. And I realized that like I feel like this is just where education is going. Like, once we're out of the pandemic, those kids are also going to have their laptops in the high school every day. Like that's not going away, or their iPads or whatever. And I feel like the messaging of like the role of music in that experience is changing. Like I'm kind of realizing that band is like becoming this old school thing. Like you can put away the laptop and you can talk to people, which is like not happening in our high school campus right now. So I'm just asking questions like of people, and I got a really phenomenal response. And uh, I've been promising to that Facebook group that like we're gonna follow through on this. And the problem is when I initially surveyed all these people, um, I never really asked permission for them like to share out their information to people that didn't participate. So I have been sharing information with the group of people that initially filled out that survey. I just haven't put it out to the public because I don't feel comfortable sharing other people's information. And I didn't ask and I should have, and I'm sorry. But I did find some really interesting commonalities between what we're hearing. And I think that is what I was interested in future conversations about this topic. One of the things that I feel like a lot of people are feeling very positive about in their recruiting and retention is direct contact with the students. I was shocked by the number of high school directors that really have a one-on-one tangible connection to the kids in the lower grades of their program and how much they go above and beyond to make that happen. I also found that I found that the kids are better recruiters than adults are. That a lot of directors that feel like recruiting is positive in their school district right now is because the kids are making it happen more so than the adults are. And I'm looking just kind of over what else I'm finding. I'm finding that the programs, was really fascinating, is the programs that feel like they're recruiting well right now are the ones that have a very clearly defined mission of like what their band is. Like it's not just like sign up for band, we go to Disney, music is fun. It's like our band program is a specific place in our high school for you to explore who you are as a person. Like the After Sectionals podcast says a lot about like they're actually just teaching good humans through music, but they're not actually teaching music anymore. They're just teaching, like kids don't write "Yo Jones" in an email. Like I correct that. I don't think other teachers do. And I think like the good human piece is really fascinating. But I was shocked by how many people like have a really strong, clear identity of what their band program is. And I keep saying band, that's where I live, but this is totally applicable to choir or to orchestra or to general music or however you want to look at it. And I found that a lot of people struggle with just like um, I think it's more about like just getting together with other people and talking about what they're doing. Like I got a lot of in the questions that are like, what don't you think you're doing well? A lot of it was just like, well, I don't know what to do. And that was really strong. That was a really strong response from a lot of individuals. Like, I just don't know what to do. Or I don't know what is different, or I don't know, why it works for my colleague in the next school district, but it doesn't here. And I found that like I think it's much more of a team effort than I always thought it was. Like I thought it was like Mr. Jones needs to recruit for high school band, but I'm learning it's more like Mr. Jones and all of the other teachers and the parents and the kids all have this like amazing opportunity to connect and make this happen. So I'm trying that this year from inspiration from like what I've seen, and I'm compiling materials. A lot of directors have shared some of the materials that they send out. A lot of people shared also that there was a lot of miscommunication that happens between the different levels of their program about their programs in general. I laugh because I just said the other day, like, I had a parent email me saying, like, is it true that it's $2,000 a kid to be in band at the high school? And I was like, we have never charged a fee like ever, So like clearly this parent like tangibly connected to that and thought like that was a thing. And I realized like just clarity of information is super important. And so these are kind of just generalized findings that I'm finding. And I feel like I've become kind of this weird excerpt because I'm expert at it because I'm sitting on all of it. And I'm trying to find ways. I'm working with different organizations. Scott Sheehan offered the resources of PMEA, and like Justin McAdams offered the resources of Cavalcade and some different groups, because I really want to bring this to the larger group and find a way that we can share more of the information and get people talking about what's working. I think the surveys, my original intent was to find areas where we all have greatness or we all have a need and really hyper focus in on them. And I think that's kind of where I am with the project. But I can just find very generalized findings are that a team of people of recruiting is super beneficial. Kids are very strong recruiters. Having a very clear vision of what your program is trying to do is super important. And then just having a really transparent way of communicating information to the masses are kind of like some of the earliest strands of commonality I'm finding between what I'm reading, between all of these directors that did share information about the program. So that's what I have. I hope to offer more in the future as I filter through more of this. I have a 4-month at home, a 4-month old at home right now. So between that and being a full-time director in COVID world, which is awful for everybody, I'm sure, I'm getting through the information as I can. I can share one thing. If you're really interested in starting to track numbers and track students, I really suggest, and he may be on this call, but if not, I suggest you reach out to Ryan Pongris in the Souderton Area School District. He built a pretty incredible like way to track students throughout their district. And I'm sure he'd be happy to share it with you. He did a session on it at his Zeswitz Professional Development Day about 2 years ago. And it's a pretty incredible resource. And he shared it with the people that were at that session. And I basically took it and retrofitted it for our district. So we're able to live time see kids coming into the district, where they are, when we lose kids from the district music program. We get to see track percentages about like when our biggest drop offs are. We get to see if there's a thing with like crossover between students. And basically, the way he built it is you just plunk in numbers for your school district and it generates like tons of information. Like we figured out that like our fourth grade population is spending well over $400,000 on instruments, and from largely from Zeswitz, but it was able to give us some, power to say to the administration, like, your families are so bought into this program that they're invested $400,000 of their own money. And, like that's powerful. And he built this whole thing. He built this whole thing. So I'm sure he'd be happy to share it with you. And I probably just threw him under the bus by putting it out there, but it's been a powerful resource for us. And he did do a session on it a few years back with Zeswitz, and it was pretty amazing. So that is my like qualitative expert of where I am with this. And I'm hoping to do more with it because, we're all going to be here at some point.
Thanks so much, Seth. I like one of the things that you said was where successful recruitment is happening, the students are doing the recruiting. And actually, that was part of our conversation, is how we can get students at the middle school level helping recruit elementary, and the high school students for helping recruit the middle school or elementary and so forth, that and have that filtered down. We talked a lot about Tri-M Music Honor Societies. It turned out that some of the road reps weren't sure that many of our schools had it. I don't know if you guys have Tri-M, but a lot of that deals with student service hours, right, in the community and in the school, and of course that is all impacted as well. So now, how do high school teachers who are advisors for their Tri-M, what do they come up with in terms of how their students can fulfill service hours? And we couldn't think of a better way to fulfill service hours than servicing your programs, in terms of that mentoring or the big brother, big sister idea that came up at our Conselmer clinic back in December. So with that, can I just turn it over to Steve Selfridge? Can you give us some thoughts?
Sure. Thanks. I'm afraid I'm not going to have quite as much to add as our guru of recruiting now, our Seth. I really connected to a lot of what Seth said. I think it's important in general, the things he's saying and he's been observing, and obviously more important than ever now. So yeah, I was really connecting to a lot of what he said. I've been at the high school. I've only been a high school director for 4 years now. I was at the elementary school for a while, like 14 years, I think. Um, but one thing I can say I'm fortunate this year is we didn't lose. Well, we lost some kids. Where we really lost kids was when we moved into our indoor programs. Outdoor, we lost a few kids we did a lot of safety protocols. We actually put on a marching band, but we were all 6 feet, and all that jazz. We did okay. We did okay. I think where we're really suffering is what Randy was making a great point with, is we really suffered in our elementary recruiting because we couldn't do our normal procedures. So, maybe I'll just talk a little bit about something that a point that Seth made and Keith just made, which is getting kids on board with recruiting, which is what I've been doing this year. I created a committee of my high school leaders. Actually, I put it out to all my students, and it ended up being a lot of my band leaders. We've been meeting weekly and just brainstorming, and so I'm really latching onto this idea that try to let the kids. First of all, I asked my kids, why are you in band? I've been doing a lot of that this year. Um, Tell me all the reasons you're in band. You start to categorize these ideas, and you see that it's 90%. It's so much about the connections that they make, the memories that they make. That's such an important part, that feeling of belonging. And so to get my high school kids on board with recruiting and to get them to communicate that to the eighth graders for that crossover, because I asked them to think back to when you're an eighth grader. What were you worried about? What were you afraid of? Let's make those connections. So some of the things we're doing, we're going to doing a band buddy system, which we're going to be incorporating, which I'm sure people here have done these things. We're going to send a survey out to the eighth graders, ask them if they're probably, are you definitely joining band, or are you a maybe, or are you a probably not? I can't bring myself to put a no option on that survey. I'll just say probably not, maybe, and definitely. So we're going to gather some information there. We've got our high schoolers. They're very excited to do this band buddies thing. Another thing I've got my high schoolers on is we're making a recruiting video, which is, again, that's nothing really new. But I want it to be very student oriented, where I'm not inserting so much of my band director reasons for joining band. I forget who, maybe it was Seth or Keith or Randy, was talking about how those sort of old school reasons for joining band, you'll do better on your SATs or whatever, it's good on your college applications. I don't think that's the the primary motivator for sure for kids. We have to connect to that community. Like Seth said, the bands that have successful recruiting are the more successful recruiting are the ones that have the band has a mission. The kids feel like they're becoming a part of something, and that's something that I think we all can think about. Really communicating that mission. So I'm putting the kids in charge of the video rather than doing it the traditional way. I'm actually having the kids contribute. I said, send me all of your short little videos of you guys just having fun at band, like all the little TikTok videos you make, and obviously keep them all PG for the eighth graders, but all of the fun you guys have at band, share those, and we're gonna show the eighth graders that they're gonna be part of something uh, that is a very powerful connection they're gonna have with their fellow students. So we're doing the band video, we're doing the band buddies, and I think I'm really gonna have to go extra emphasis on, like Seth said, communicating with the parents. Just make sure they have all the information uh, as early as possible. And I'll leave with this because I'm rambling a little bit. I really love the idea that Seth said about not thinking about it so much as retention, but every year is a recruiting year. So I'm definitely going to be stealing that idea because we're going to have to do that, especially with what we're dealing with. So Keith,
Yeah, that's a key point. I love
yeah,
that idea of thinking every year as a recruiting year, kind of like that onboarding that I said from the beginning. Let's always think about recruiting new kids into the programs at all levels.
yeah.
Let's open it up. I know we own about 12 minutes to the hour, but please fill the chat with ideas and share with everybody. I was getting a bunch of direct messages, but if you could put it in for everybody, that would be great. And I will save the chat. But let's ideas. Either unmute yourself, put a hand up. I can't see everybody. I have two screens, so feel free to unmute yourself. All right, I'm going to call on somebody. Craig Snyder, you still here?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Hi, Craig.
Hello.
So, Craig, I just saw on Facebook a couple days ago you did a call out to alumni, and didn't you? Wasn't it you? And I've seen it like now maybe a dozen times in the last 2 or 3 days, but yours was the first one I saw. You want to just mention that as an idea because?
Sure. So just trying to recruit the Army here to battle this issue that we're all dealing with. And I put a thing out on Facebook. We have a alumni Facebook page for the band. I'm the high school band director at Pencrest. And then just my general personal Facebook asking my former students who are now Facebook friends with me if they had any messages for students who are here at course selection time making what is normally a difficult decision, a really hard decision, whether or not to stick with the program. And the outpouring has been amazing. And I know all of you have made such great connections with your students and your former students. And you might be surprised if you do something like that, how many people get back to you and who gets back to you. Like that kid that didn't seem to be really into what they were doing and gave you a hard time, that kid might come in. Or maybe a student that was an alumni of your program before you were even the band director. My earliest alumnus that responded to this was from 1972. And then I had people from the 80s, and a few of us still remember the 80s, and then a number of them that came in from my time up at the high school, right up until the last 4 years or so. So now some of my own current students will know some of these names that are coming in. And what I'm doing is, since I'm using an LMS like a lot of you are to connect with most of my students, is about every other day, I'm just putting a little Y band in there, like a Dr. Tim Y band, and I'm putting one of those messages in. And so far, I'm getting a really good result. We'll find out in about 3 weeks whether maybe somebody was thinking about dropping out but hung in there because of it. But every little bit helps, and don't leave any stones unturned right now because yeah, this is a very fragile time for all of our programs. We just got to get these kids to wait it out.
And we do
Yeah,
have a lot.
thanks, David.
Thanks so much for that, Craig. And if we took that same thing down to not just the alumni, but middle school kids who just left the elementary program, they stayed with it, to send some messages back to the elementary teacher to keep those kids involved in the program, those 2020 recruits, but also ideas on how we can get to the incoming third grade class, right? Messages from those alumni, from the high school, middle school, to the people who haven't even started yet. The ones that are thinking about taking an instrument. There needs to be that impact, I think. Who else has something to share?
I'll give one. Hi, everybody. One of the things I did when everything shut down last spring, and I'm starting up again, in most of our cases, I teach in North Penn School District. I'm one of the middle school band directors. And what I did last year that I'm going to bring back in is, typically a high school finishes 20 to 30 minutes earlier than your middle school. And if you're fortunate enough to have lessons that come at the end of your day, reach out to your kids that are in the high school program that were your kids and have them come into your Google Meet when you have that flute lesson. So you bring in, one of the flutists that are in a high school that was in your band. And the next one you bring in, a percussionist, whatever else. I had a student who is at Westchester now, couldn't do it for me last spring as a percussionist. But the idea is that it's a pretty easy way to do that. And as we all know, the high school kids will be fighting each other for the opportunity to come and hang with you and the kids. So that's one that just sitting here and for the first time this year, I feel like I'm not totally suffocating and I can start to think a little bit. And that was one of the things I realized that a year ago, and just sitting here and hearing some of your ideas, I wanted to be able to share that one with you, that if you can build that in, it's pretty cool. It went over like big time. Besides seeing your high school kids and they make you feel like a rock star anyway, we know that, but it was pretty cool. So hope that helps.
Yeah. And then even having a sixth grader join a fourth grade lesson,
right.
that would be,
exactly.
That would be awesome.
Yep.
Other ideas? Keep them coming. Unmute.
Hi, everyone. This is Ryan Pongras. I heard through the grapevine that somebody shot my name out about spreadsheets and things. I am dorky when it comes to spreadsheets. If you need any help with anything, putting anything together, I'm an elementary school guy. That's why I didn't attend this. I'm an elementary school guy in Souderton. I am the keeper of the numbers in our district, and it's always great to go into my administration and I present to them every single spring. Look how many kids we have, look at the numbers have, look at everything that we have. And since doing this for about the past 8 years or so, people back off from us and they don't come looking for us when it's time to cut. And I think that has a big thing to do with it because we present them with good, hard facts. It's very difficult to argue with that. The other thing that we do in Souderton that really saved us this year was we did spring recruitment. I highly suggest for everyone out there in the world, I don't know why this is not just what we do in our industry, is spring recruitment. My instrumentation for the fall is set in June. So I know that if I have the right amount of trombones, not too many saxophones, not too many flutes, the right amount of clarinets, because you have to remember that we elementary school folks are setting up the instrumentation for our high school wind ensemble. So if we don't think like that, then our high school wind ensembles are going to not be able to play the Holst First Suite. And that's a problem. So we need to think about that. And it starts when kids are in third grade. And unfortunately, we base our instrumentation off of the whims of a 9-year-old. So we have to think about all of these things. So I'm just throwing that out there. And I'll let you guys go back to your little secondary party and have fun.
Hey,
Ryan,
I
actually,
want to second that if I can, and thank you, Ryan. It was Seth who dragged you into this, but for very good reason, because your command of your data is excellent. So I want to second two things that you said. One, for all the middle and high school band directors and orchestra directors on this call tonight, if you don't have good visibility into what's going on in your elementary program, now's a great time to build those connections and to gather that data that Ryan's talking about. And he's got a great framework for you to do that. But the second thing is I can't stress this enough. Ryan is absolutely right this year about spring recruiting. And the real big opportunity there, in addition to all of the benefits that he mentioned, is that it will allow you some advanced warning and some visibility into what your numbers look like for next fall as an overall number. And it'll allow you to give some more time to address any decrease in demand that you might be seeing or any softness in student interest. I don't think there will be either. I think this is going to be a great year. But if you have an issue, the spring recruiting gives you a lot more time to solve it, and also tweak your instrumentation, which is great as well. So 2 very good points from Mr. Pongras. Thank you.
Yeah, I also want to say, Ryan, at least half the people on this call are elementary people. It's not all secondary. And in fact, even though we advertised it as such, when it started to come in and I saw so many elementary people on the list, I'm like, well, this is actually really great, because now we're on the call together, right? The elementary and the secondary folks are talking about the plans together and hearing the ideas together. And that's what we need to happen anyway. So other ideas, you have a few more minutes, a few more ideas. Continue to put stuff in the chat. I will follow this up with a link to the recording. We can share that out to everybody. And I'll share the chat. A few more ideas, thoughts?
I just say that this year I was lucky enough to have a Zoom meeting with like a bunch of high school kids, and my middle school kids are going to school next year. And we said this earlier that I was a band room kid. I mean, I spent my life in there, and I now spent the rest of my life in there. But the reality is that that's a special place, and I said it to my students, and then the high school kids are saying the same thing. Is you go back and visit your band room when you were a kid. Come on, I mean that's something really special. There's a lot that happens in there, and you're in there for 3 years with the same people, and you've always got that story about the thing that fell in the tuba, and that's what it's all about. So that. I think that swayed a lot of my middle school students to continue into the high school. And I'm lucky enough to have a phenomenal feeder from the elementary school. And she set up a Zoom, and I got to meet the kids and just being visible. And I can't say enough about what Mr. Pongras said about spring recruiting, or at least spring contact. Even if it's not just recruiting, it's just contact, being visible and having people see you. So that's enough for me asking out.
Thanks, Greg. I love that idea of setting up a Zoom for your colleagues to meet your kids, especially the one that's going to be their teacher. How important is that? That's crucial. Not just once. Make it a regular thing. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I'd like to add, I mean, I don't know, there's probably a lot of people like in the same boat as me, but like this sort of thing keeps me up at night. And just the thought of all the work putting into all of this stuff, like it does literally keep me up at night. And I want to say, just don't forget to ask around for help for things. When you guys are doing whatever, like I was seriously terrified of putting together videos. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm here. It's February. Our course things are due next month. Oh man, I'm like so behind. I just set out to my band parent meeting on Tuesday. I need some help with this. I can't do it. And I had a parent volunteer right away. Within an hour, she had sent me an email with possible scripts and questions to ask. So what we're doing is kind of a lot of what you guys have said in the comment section. We're going to send out a Google form and have the kids kind of put together their favorite band memories and their favorite band director quotes. For some reason, we say funny things. I don't know. But just don't forget to reach out and ask people for help and try and get kids to help out and try and get parents to help out and all that kind of stuff. Don't be like me. That's all I got.
Thanks so much. That reminds me when COVID hit, just how resilient we saw teachers, right? Teachers in general, but especially our profession in music education, and how many people were sharing and getting involved in Facebook groups and online teaching groups and sharing, because that was not really being done before. We were all in our silos, we call it, right? Just in our own programs. And sometimes, our competitive natures take us there. But now we are all really being affected by this together, and that sharing
Can I say something real quick?
Please, Terry, go ahead.
I think just from what I've been seeing across the country with different things, with different people I've been talking to, with different distributors and things, everybody's gearing up for a back to school special, and we as band directors need to be positive. There's going to be a pent up demand for band recruitment, for band instruments, and just go gung ho. Like, we're coming back to school. We're going to be back better than ever. And pull these kids back in. I think I get email messages from kids all like, I'm sorry I didn't do your clips because I've been overwhelmed by the amount of work from the teachers. I don't know what your experience is, but when I started doing the band video clips like everybody else is, everybody was all in, but then the novelty wears off, and that's just what happens. My entertainment agency I play for, it's the same thing. We were all doing the video clips, and they can barely get people in now at this point to do it. But I think once the kids start coming back to school, I think we're going to be okay. I think we're going to be a year behind, but I think we're going to be, the kids want that interaction with their friends, and there's no better way to do it than in band. I have a little more.
Very much, Terry.
Yeah,
that's a great thing to end on. Randy, you want to say anything for the good of the order?
Yeah. Hey, it's a huge thank you to everybody for joining the call tonight. You're here because you care about your programs. We're here because we care about your programs. And we didn't really get to touch on any of the specifics, but talk with your ed reps about your ideas for recruiting. We've got some great resources. I'll touch on them briefly. Musicrecruitment.com is a way to get your students an introduction to the instrument, your fourth graders or beginners, an introduction to the instruments, and kind of replicate that feeling of trying out instruments in a virtual way. We can do Zoom. We can facilitate Zoom parent meetings for you. This is a great resource I really want everybody to know about. We produce virtual concerts, virtual ensembles. If you want your program to have an opportunity to play, we have a video editing firm that can take all of the burden off of that. And in most cases with our clients, we'll sponsor it at no cost to the district. So your students record themselves playing a piece. Our video editing firm will stitch it all together, produce the product for you. And what a great way to make your program visible this spring to your community and to your school district, to show them all playing together. And then coming up this fall, we really want to see you be successful. That's really the bottom line. What Ryan touched on, what Dr. Selfridge touched on, what Seth Jones touched on, that retention and recruiting is going to be key in helping you to overcome all your challenges for your program. We want to be a huge part of that. Thank you for joining us tonight and hearing our thoughts and ideas about this. We're so glad that you were with us. We're so grateful to our presenters and to all of you that shared ideas tonight. We will get through this together. We will be the heroes of the comeback. You will be the heroes of the comeback of music programs in the region. So with that, thank you so much. And a huge thank you to Keith Hodgson for hosting and organizing tonight.
Thank you, everybody. Good night. Stay in touch.